Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the July 16th Post Falls City Council meeting. Shannon, please note that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. Wolf, who tonight is excused. Ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations. We do have a couple announcements. The annual K9 Tournament fundraiser is this Friday, July 19th at 9 a.m. at the Links Golf Course. The fundraiser is hosted by the Post Falls Police K9 Unit, and all proceeds go to support the Post Falls K9 program. For tickets, contact the Links Golf Club. The Post Falls Sprint, Triathlon, and Duathlon is August 4th at 8 a.m. at Camelon Park. The race consists of a 0.3-mile swim, 12-mile bike ride, and 3-mile run. Visit the city's website for online registration and information. And under amendments to the agenda, I am going to ask that item under consent calendar, item E, be moved to, I guess that would be old business? Or would that be a new business, Ms. Wilson?
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. And I have no issues with it, but I just think some information would be good on that.
Second.
Can I make the motion?
I don't. Can the mayor make a motion? I will so move.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict this evening? Seeing none, would you please present the consent agenda?
Item A is minutes from the July 2nd, 2019 City Council meeting. Item B is minutes from the July 8th, 2019 City Council Infrastructure Tour. Item C is payables June 25th through July 8th, 2019. Item D is Master Development Agreement Addendum for Peregrine Place Subdivision. And item F is Infinity Edge Estates Subdivision Plat Application. And item G is Beck Park Splash Pad Drainage Provisions.
Any questions on Shelley, on the consent calendar? I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Tonight we have 3 public hearings, and I did not mention, but if anyone wishes to testify on any of the public hearings, please fill out a form on the back podium there and turn them into our clerk. First public hearing tonight is the Green Meadows First Edition Annexation. Open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Wilhelm, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls, introducing the Green Meadows First Edition Annexation ANNX 2019. The owner is a River City Properties, LLC. The owner group is here this evening, as well as the representative for that group of Olson Engineering. So you're being asked tonight to review the annexation request of approximately 40 acres and make a decision of some mixed zoning for this area, from single-family residential, medium-density residential, and community commercial services to CCS zoning. Project location is, as you see here in the red hatched box. It's about the center of this project is west of Highway 41 in Prairie, about 3/4 of a mile on the south side of Prairie. Currently, it's agricultural. There's no significant topology or vegetation, and it's vacant. Ross Point Water District would be the water provider, with sewer being provided by the City of Post Falls. So the single family, that's the R1 designation, as you see here, that's the proposed zoning designation. R2 is the medium density with CCS at the northeast corner of the 40 acres. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this on May 14th and forwarded a recommendation of approval as proposed, and I'll go into a little bit more of the details of kind of maybe why they made that recommendation. So they reviewed it based off of the 6 review criteria for establishing zones. 1 is consistent with the future land use map. Is it consistent with the goals and policies in the comp plan? Is it consistent with street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, and community plans? Also, they looked at commercial and high-density residential being assigned near higher classified roads rather than low-density being next to your higher classified roads, which is the next criteria, is typically you'd have your limited or your lower density further away from your arterials or further away from your core areas of your community. The last criteria dealt with industrial zoning, which wasn't being requested. So looking at the compatibility of kind of the infrastructure standpoint, you're looking at Prairie Avenue being an arterial, you have Highway 41 just to the east, which we all know is being widened here in the near future due to its loading and issues. So Prairie Avenue, which ultimately would be a 5-lane road, they're proposing the R2 zoning, which allows for a mix of type of housing products, anywhere from single family to multifamily to twin homes. And then he also has the CCS, all of which would be compatible with Prairie Avenue being adjacent to it. Similarly, we have single family further to the south. You see here about Kildare Avenue over in Tullamore that transition to single family. So they're doing that. They're trying to transition from your higher classified road rates to road classifications to a lesser classified zoning district. Also, they were presented the surrounding environment and what's being developed or what could be developed. So P&Z looked at Green Meadows subdivision that's just to the southwest, which was recently approved, and that was for single family. And that matches that line of R1. And then it proceeds further to the west, which would eventually, as this area develops, will meld in with the, which is Fieldstone, and it's all zoned R1 for single family. To the east, you have a future park at this location. We are currently looking at a pre-app for this Hingston property, as highlighted in red there. Similarly, they, I believe, took some weight and measure of the tech park just to the north that you have to the north and east. We see highlighted in red hatch that technology mixed. What you see in blue is approved annexation for additional technology mixed. Has not yet recorded the ordinance, so it's transitioning into being melded into that tech park of approximately 300 acres. Here's a closer look of that planned subdivision just to the west of this site. Here's where the future land use map showed as being residential. Going back to that commercial, the reason why that commercial is eligible to be requested with that was because of the amount of cars that go down Prairie. There's a code part about for that residential designation that when volumes exceed 4,000 per day, that you can get a different zoning district, commercial designation. So that would be the case for this. Any questions at this point of how and why we might be here for zoning before I go into the annexation policy overview?
Questions, John?
So that set the stage of why there is a recommendation for the zoning. So now we're looking at the annexation. That's what you guys are reviewing is, should it be annexed or not annexed? So I didn't go through every policy. I kind of hit the highlights pertinent to this, and I'll actually touch base on it on a couple other areas as I present this. So one is seek completion or continuation of pedestrian network that connects neighborhoods to amenities. Should be consistent with the city's master plans, water, sewer, transportation, parks, emergency services. And priority should be given to lands that have utility infrastructure readily available. And also should prove a logical extension to park systems, providing usable open space, benefits to the overall community, as well as being connected and joining neighborhoods through interconnected pedestrian transportation network. So I'll hit the parks bit a little bit. This is an excerpt from our proposed draft comp plan. The attempt of this is we know that we'll have additional annexation requests in the future. What Parks and what Planning did is looked at where are our gaps and how can we maximize locations of parks in the future with annexation agreements, so we improve the efficiency of acquiring lands and getting connections with parks. So that's what these green areas highlight, is as you get closer to the center of those, the better or improved performance we can in getting and meeting the level of service demands for Post Falls in the future. As part of that, what you see is current, this is this line right here, based off currently planned parks, they utilize a 1 mile buffer around their parks for a level of service to meet their long-term plans for the parks. So this site, what you see here, is within that service area for parks at this point in time, assuming that they get the future park completed, the regional park as well as other parks and areas developed. This is a zoomed in image. What you see here is Tullamore Park, which is currently being completed, and that regional park. I also located, there is a school at this location. Both these two open spaces are within a half mile of the proposal. Also, once this develops, Killdeer Avenue will be improved with a multi-use trail which will connect the development within this region from the west to the east. Similarly, as the lands to the north of Fieldstone develops, it will ultimately connect these residents to Idaho to the west. That kind of goes back to connecting neighborhoods to its amenities. So you'll have commercial development along Highway 41 that will be able to utilize Killdeer as a connecting corridor, or if they wanted to go to the golf course to the west, they could use Killdeer to go that direction for those amenities, or if it was school or whatever may be developed in the future. For as far as the other master plans, it was identified within the zoning, looking at that it was consistent with all the adopted master plans for that area. The infrastructure that would be available as that subdivision develops at this location, its utilities is planned to go to the south on Greens Ferry Road, so that development would then have infrastructure readily available to facilitate this site through development. One of the annexation policies deals with prioritizing infill. Now, this really wouldn't technically be textbook infill, but it does kind of have this finger poking down parallel to Highway 41 into Post Falls. And ideally, you would look to long-term eventually square this off to kind of make Post Falls have less infill islands as well as fingers poking into its community of county pockets or areas. There's the future land use map showing it residential again. There is the surrounding zoning currently in Post Falls, discussed. There are some items for inclusion. This also touch bases on some of the other annexation policies. One of the policies is acquiring water rights, and so one of the first item is to, if any water rights are available, that we would have it granted to the city or to the municipal water purveyor by the city. We have another policy dealing with dedicating right-of-way as part of annexations, and you see that in the second one. Similarly, we have items dealing with paying its fair share or its burden on the infrastructure, and you see that being addressed with the surcharge in the third item. And additionally, there's cited to, as part of the annexation agreement, that be consistent with the KMPO's critical access corridor policy. KMPO is the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization. They look at your major arterials and collectors and how they work with Highway 41, Prairie, Idaho, for example, and how they connect to the interstate and through the community. So this was the agencies that were routed. We did hear from Kootenai County and from the police, and they remained neutral on the proposal. Any questions for me as staff?
Questions, Mr. Manley? Steve?
John, I got a question. Maybe, and I should ask this on the zoning. Could you go back to the map that showed the 4 quadrants? You know, the zonings for R2 and
That work?
that one there. When I was reading through the applicant's memo here from Olson Engineering, they originally had a lot more R2 proposed, so were these changes made at the planning? Because where that R1 is on his memo, I think it's the southeast quadrant. The next one over, so it'd be that one. In the memo, it says they were requesting R2 zoning. So was this changed at the planning commission then?
There was some reiterations through the process from pre-annexation application to final application. I do remember seeing that may be a typo from my memory, and they're here, so when they speak, they can
Okay.
clarify that. But from what I understanding, they do want to delineate this line here and everything south as being R1.
Okay. Yeah, I was just, because it said with desired zoning is a mix of R1, R2, and I'll just kind of skip forward. The CCS was proposed for the north 1/2, R1 for the southwest 1/4, and R2 for the southeast 1/4. So that R2 southeast is becoming R1, it looks like, so, which is good.
Yeah, the plan that I'm aware of is to have R1 adjacent to Killdeer Lane, with R2 being the transitional zone to Prairie Avenue.
Okay.
Any other questions, John? Does the applicant wish to speak? Applicant wish to speak?
Yes.
Shelley? Thank you. Name for the record, please.
Yes, hello, Council, Mayor. I'm Eric Olson, Olson Engineering, 705 South Riverside Harbor Drive, right here in Post Falls. Thanks, John, you did a really good job. Stole a lot of the things that I was going to talk about, but I will hit on a couple things here. Okay, so yeah, John mentioned we recently got approval on our first subdivision. That's shown on at a little wider scale on this page. Let me open this a different way. There we go. Yeah, so as John mentioned, this subdivision will ultimately provide for frontage improvements on our frontages with Greens Ferry and Killdeer, so that includes a mixture of sidewalks and multi-use pathways. Also, we're bringing water and sewer through the project, obviously, as well as stubbing some of our interior circulation streets to the east for connectivity. This overlay here shows in green. Can't really see my cursor there, but sewer is going to be extended from Greens Ferry Elementary as a result of this project all the way up Greens Ferry, and then right to the footstep, or the doorstep rather, of this 40 acres. The subdivision requires also water be extended from Greens Ferry Elementary actually all the way down Killdeer to Cecil. So regardless of what happens tonight, once this is developed, there will be water on our south frontage, a 12-inch water main. And incidentally, I think those are, the water and the sewer are obstacles, I think, towards the development of some adjoining properties. We know that there was when we started, we had ACUF's pre-application we knew was happening, and maybe it's happening again here on this 20 acres. But those properties are challenged for sewer without these extensions. So I like to think that this proposal will make those properties more appealing for development eventually, and particularly when this 20 acres develops, the 20 acres to the east of our proposal, that will end up filling a gap in that pathway. So we'd be extending the pathway on Killdeer from our western boundary here, west of Greens Ferry, to our eastern boundary. And so that's the gap. And then you've got Tullamore's already built the pathway here fronting the park. So it's kind of what I see as logical steps towards creating that network. As far as the transportation goes, obviously we've got our right-of-way dedications, improvements planned on State Highway 41 for 2020 and 2021. I was told that there was a bid opening today on the traffic signal at Greens Ferry and Prairie, so I believe that's coming this year. So this is just another piece, a pretty sizable chunk of right-of-way along Prairie Avenue that's needed to complete that link between 41 and Greens Ferry. And also as we develop towards that frontage up there, we'd be required to contribute towards the actual construction of that road, widening of Prairie Avenue. John hit pretty well on these policies, but I did want to talk a little bit about the zoning and kind of how we got here. We did try to be thoughtful about it. I think when we went into pre-annexation, it sounds like, Steve, that was what we were proposing at pre-annexation, and then we worked through that with staff and talked to our neighbors and what they were planning, and read the comp plan, and we feel like we really made an effort to adhere to what the comp plan was proposing, which a couple things that I'd like to point out is basically multifamily and commercial along arterial and collector streets. That's throughout the current comp plan and all over the draft comp plan as well. But if you look at the current zoning map, what you see is basically a C of R1 zoning all along Prairie Avenue, and really in the immediate vicinity there's no R2 zoning anywhere until you get west of quite a ways west and south of Idaho, over in the corner of my excerpt map here. So that was the thought, that we would try and adhere to the recommendations in the comprehensive plan and provide sort of a staged zoning from R1 in the south up to R2, and then a little bit of commercial in the northeast corner, anticipating proximity to the tech park that may ultimately develop there, as well as possible multifamily across the street in the future. So that's all I have. I'll stand for questions.
Question, Mr. Olson. See none. Thank you.
Thanks.
Shannon. Thank you. Wishing to testify in opposition, Lacey Green. Please come forward and name for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name's Lacey. Last name Green. I live out on the Rastrum Prairie. I spoke a little bit at our last meeting in regards to the effect and cause having another development put in before proper expansion of prairie is looked into. As you said before, there have been schools. A school has been approved. The schooling, the kids, the amount of increase traffic in that area would be extremely detrimental. The amount of time it takes to get through that intersection currently is absolutely ridiculous during rush hour. during busier hours with the cross-traffic on Prairie. In regards to having a stoplight put in, yes, that will help, but it will also back up that traffic precedently through 41, where all this construction is going to be happening here soon. In the previous meeting, there was a comment that was made in regards to an annexation possibly in the future, but now wouldn't be the proper timing to do so. I still agree 100% in regards to that. They could get the annexation today and commit to possibly not building for a certain amount of time, but commitments, people's words and loyalties are far and few between nowadays. And I just think it's really detrimental to the area, and it's not prepped enough. And the traffic would be a huge issue and impact on the area, even more so than what it already is with all the building that's going on. There's enough building that is coming about in that area, and I think a grace period of seeing how well that's accounted for and occupied. Sorry, I don't speak very much, so is kind of one of those things where, you know, we don't need to just push this every month, add something new, add something new to the point of that's all we do. I think there needs to be spatial gaps in there to where we can account for the growth and accommodate what that growth is going to bring. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Also wishing to speak in opposition, Bob Flowers.
Bob Flowers, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Well, the young lady pointed out a few good things. Part of what I was going to bring up, that like the last meeting, a lot of this is betting on the come. Prairie will be 5 lanes one day. That park's going to be in there one day. 41 will be done 2 or 3 years from now, maybe. But what bothers me the most about this, because I'm not against the annexation, what I'm against is the multiple zoning designations for a single piece of property. What we're asking right now, or what I perceive the applicant asking for right now, is for 40 acres annexed in with 3 different zoning. I have not seen anything that says, okay, 20 acres is going to be R1, X amount of acres is going to be R2, and X amount of acres is going to be CCS, which we all know what happens with CCS when they don't get a business to move in there. They just go for a PUD and they turn it into multifamily high density. We've seen it time and time again. But I think if this was tightened up a little bit and they actually put in some exact acreage for these different zoning, I'm just curious how you can give one piece of property, because that's what it's being brought into the city as, is one 40-acre step, can have 3 separate zoning without any designation on what's what. Anyway, that's my concerns. I think it's too much, too quick. Does it belong in the city? Of course it does. All that's going to fill in there eventually. But as the lady before me said, maybe we should see when Prairie's going to get widened, when 41 really gets done. How much are these other developments that have already been improved, how much are they already going to affect? Is that new school, is it already filled up with kids? We don't know, because the families aren't there yet, but it could be. We're not really thinking ahead. We're just thinking about this month's annexation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Applicant, wish to rebut?
Yeah, so in response to those thoughts there, I would say, just to clarify, I did send an email over to ITD today regarding the status of 41. Oh, I'm not up there. Thanks. So I just asked, so I just want to make sure you guys have the facts of when 41 is going to be built. So I asked Randy Durland over there, is the project still on schedule for 2021, and have they moved to right-of-way acquisition? And the answer is currently the schedule is still 20 and 21 for construction. Right-of-way is currently being acquired. Yeah, I don't probably need to get into all the funds there. But that project's going to happen in 20 and 21, so we can be clear about that. I don't know specifically when the park is coming, but I believe it's, from talking to staff, that is imminent within the next year or two. Maybe staff could clarify that. In terms of the acreages, these parcels are assembled from 4 platted 10-acre tracts. And I think it's pretty clear that those lines are drawn in quadrants. So basically the south 20 is R1, the northwest 10 is R2, and then I've given specific dimensions on the CCS area, so I think you can derive the other acreages there. And as far as Prairie goes and when that's going to happen, I would see this as an opportunity. You're going to get impact fees from us. You're going to get right away from us. When we develop frontages on Prairie, we're required to pay for our half of Prairie Avenue. So all of those items can be used as leverage along with the current transportation planning to actually accomplish the widening of Prairie Avenue. I think this is a different project than the one you heard last month in terms of if the timing's right. I think this is the next project, and in terms of being able to piggyback immediately on a approved project, and as this develops, teeing up those other areas for development. And that's all I have. Any other questions?
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That I'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, before you close the public hearing, did you want Dave to respond to the question on parks?
On the parks.
I will reopen the public hearing. Please.
Actually, when we're talking about this area, there's
Excuse me, can you tell the people who you are?
Dave Fair, Parks and Recreation Director. Okay. When we're looking at this area, we're really looking at 2 parks. Tullamore Park just opened up. We did the dedication this last month, and that falls within the 1-mile radius. The second park they're talking about is the sports complex. We will be starting design this fall, continuing into the next year, and then looking at bids. Construction could go anywhere from 2020 to 2021, with anticipation of it opening about 2021.
Linda.
Is there going to be any places for kids to play there, or is that just going to be sports fields, Dave?
Sports fields, we may have a small playground just for the people who are in the leagues and stuff if they bring kids, but Tullamore Park, which is a quarter-mile down the road at most, has large playgrounds, pickleball courts, basketball courts, shelters.
This might be a better question for Mr. Olson, if I could ask that. Is there going to be any green space in the development that you're planning? Or that
Councilman Anthony,
question?
that would come with the subdivision of the property,
Okay. So there would be some green space in there.
potentially. I mean, that, once you go to plat and you start designing the subdivision, that's when you start determining what goes in there. At this point, we're just setting up whether or not it should be annexed and what the zoning would be. The actual layout and design of the sites, that would come another process that goes in front of the planning commission.
Okay. Okay. I guess, so Dave, you're comfortable then that the park's facilities around that would be able to handle any an annexation and subdivision like this, increased population?
As we've been adding and keeping within our level of service matrix, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now close public hearing. Council, how'd you like that?
I'll speak. Well, I did, well, I actually made several phone calls over the last several days. I also called ITD. I also called several people that have to do with the tech park. I called our legal counsel and asked the same question that Lacey Green asked about annexing it, giving it a zone, and then putting off development until Highway 41 could be finished. And legal counsel suggested that that's not a very good idea. I know that Highway 41 is going to be finished. A couple of people's comments to me that I did call said that most likely the people moving into this subdivision would either use Greens Ferry or Cecil instead of Highway 41 when traveling. And I don't think I'm supposed to go out there and drive around, but I drive around for a living, so I did. And I guess I disagree with that. I'm more of the I'm going the quickest way type of girl. But all in all, I believe that this mixed-use project is a good project. I think it, I'm in favor of it, and I think it's a lot different than 2 weeks ago when the last annexation request came that was, number one, R3, number two, it was on the north side of Prairie. There was no direct access to a park unless you had to cross a very busy street, and I'm going to be in favor.
Well, when I look at this, the 40 acres is going to take quite a few years to develop. It's not going to happen overnight. It's, I'm sure they're going to have stages of doing this, and I think the right-of-way helps to be able to acquire that right-of-way to come along with that. And I also like the infill part of it, that we are starting to infill those areas that were in the county, so I would be in support of this project too.
Lynn?
I like the project, and I think it fits that area well, but I have a huge concern about the county pockets that we're forming within the city limits. And I think that goes towards our infrastructure issues, and I'm probably the guy that hates the worst of putting in paving roads and then tearing them up because we're going to extend this or that somewhere else. So the infill thing has me concerned, and that's the second pocket that's pretty large on that part of our community. But I can see that it fits in that area pretty well. So.
Joe?
My comment's going to be very similar to 2 weeks ago. Although even more so than 2 weeks ago, I really like this project. 2 years from now. The park is a couple years off. Highway 41's a couple years off. The stoplight is probably a year off. There's the 20 acres to the east of it is in pre-application. I do like that it does abut currently approved development. I think that extension of sewer and water is a good thing. Improvements along Prairie are going to connect far sooner than it would be along the north side. But there's as somebody who's lived in North Idaho my entire life and Post Falls for about half of it, there's so much building going on and everything's getting so much more congested. As I've been saying for the last couple of years, I almost feel like we need to pump the brakes a bit and get ahead of the growth infrastructure-wise before we start putting things in. I think growth can be a good thing. I think this is a smart project. As Mr. Flowers expressed, I do have a concern that the CCS on the corner can become R3 in a hurry until we get our zoning ordinances updated. If it was the end of 2020, 2021, I'd be all over this one. Right now, I've got some reservations on it.
Thank you, Gary.
I agree to a point, but everything that you're talking about that will happen in 2020, 2021, this isn't going to be built out this year. So I think it would, I see where with Prairie, I think that's the timing for that improvements on that property as well as to Prairie. That timing is advantageous. I do like the CCS, and I like the fact that it's 4 platted 10-acre tracts as far as the zoning. So I think what it is what it will be. So I would support it.
I'm going to move to make a motion to accept Green Meadows First Edition Annexation Number ANNX-0002-2019.
Second?
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Nay.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item up on public hearings is the intent to sell municipal real property located at 310 North Spokane Street.
So I'm going to talk, and John's going to help me out to save me
I'll open the public hearing.
walking over there for 3 slides and turning around and coming right back, since he's already over there. So, at one of our last meetings, we came to council and we asked for your input on what type of a minimum price that we would accept for a piece of property that we own on Spokane Street. And with an eye to noticing that as surplus property to be auctioned off. So that we've noticed up a hearing for tonight to allow the public to come in and comment on whether or not the city should dispose of this property. So go to the next slide, John. So the property is located at 310 North Spokane Street. We obtained that property in 2017 in an exchange with Kootenai County. That was as part of the project to facilitate additional parking for the licensing division. We issued, in conjunction with the Urban Renewal Agency, an RFP back in 2017 looking for potential users at that time. Didn't get any interest at that point in time. Since then, there's been a couple of inquiries about the property asking if it was available. They'd like to do something with it, and so we thought it was an opportune time to begin this process again. As I said back in June, the council said $250,000 would be the minimum amount they'd be willing to take. The property's approximately 0.6 acres. It's zoned SC5. The legal description is there. And if the council elects after the hearing tonight to proceed with auctioning the property off, we would do a sealed bid auction to allow hopefully the best input and the best amount of participation in that auction. The next one, it'll show you again quickly where the area is. This is just south of where we're located tonight, adjacent to the railroad tracks as it turns to the east. That's an aerial. We have a street view coming up on the next slide. And so that's it. Any questions for me before we turn it over to the public?
Questions for Mr. Wilson? Thank you. So that would be the staff report and the proponent.
That was
right?
it. All, I think, 4 slides.
Are there any people wishing to testify?
We have none.
And are we going to no, you're probably not going to want to rebut yourself.
Probably not.
I will close the public hearing. Council.
I would move to approve a sealed bid process for the property located at 310 North Spokane Street.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Motion passes. And the final public hearing tonight is the intent to exchange municipal real property. Open the public hearing.
Dave Fair, Park and Recreation Director. So this will be a quick one too. It's housekeeping. We're proposing an exchange of property with Mr. Lingle in the city. And really what we're looking at is a remnant resolution. Last year we did some encroachment adjustments with the Rhinelands. Part of that was knowing that this parcel was, we'd work with Mr. Lingle. The ditch divided his property up. So in the meantime, we've gone through, we've squared it up. Initial survey, squared it up. We've talked to Mr. Lingle. We was presented to council at your last meeting. And then we have the proposed land trade here with the public hearing. The site, that was Mr. Lingle, so you can see the ditch going through. On the survey part of it, that's really the survey highlighted there. We would obtain the stuff in yellow, and Mr. Lingle would have the area in blue. It's an equal amount of land being traded, 23,439 square feet each way. So. And then when we're finished, that's how the Corbin irrigation ditch would look. And that just cleans up that end of Pleasant View and where we go there. So I'm open for questions.
Questions for Dave?
Pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to testify?
We have none.
Close the public hearing. How would council like to act?
I'd move to approve the Lingle Corbin ditch trade.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item up on the agenda tonight is unfinished business. The first item is declaring the downtown area to be a deteriorating area.
And before we get started, I forgot to do this at the beginning of the meeting, but I am going to recuse myself from voting on this issue because although I have no ownership in any property in that area, people with the same last name do that I'm directly related to. So to avoid any perception of conflict of interest, I'm going to recuse myself from voting on this one.
Thanks, Joe.
Good evening. I'm Bob Seal, Community Development Director. After this, there is a resolution on the agenda to talk about as well, or talk amongst yourselves about. The proposed new downtown urban renewal district is basically kind of an expansion and replacement of a previous district that had closed in 2018. Before its closure, the city council and members had met to discuss creating a new district such as this one. And we are looking to potentially move forward with the creation of the new downtown district. After you had talked about it in 2017, there was a pause while the Urban Renewal Agency as well as City Council worked through the process of creating the tech park. After the tech park was created, the city started looking again at this downtown area. We hired JUB to perform an eligibility study. In April of this year, the City Council met with the Urban Renewal Agency and in joint workshop to discuss the draft of that plan. And after JUB and staff had reviewed the eligibility report in its final form, determined that it was time to bring it forward in hopes that the Urban Renewal Agency would recommend and the City Council would adopt the plan and move forward with creating a true development plan for the downtown area by through the utilization of this urban renewal district. The closed district, as shown on the map on the screen, was a bit smaller than the current proposed outlined area. The new district will be 548 acres of mixed land uses. The difference between the two primarily is the extensions below First Avenue and north of I-90, and then including the Idaho veneer site as well. Those are the primary additions to this new map. So JUB completed the eligibility study, and within the eligibility study, it had focused on the deteriorating area, looking at streets, looking at buildings, looking at connectivity, things along those lines. In the state code, they refer to various instances that would be considered as a deteriorating area. We're focusing on the first three that are listed on the screen. The presence of substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures, predominance of defective, inadequate street layout, faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, accessibility, or usefulness. Those are the primary ones that we looked at when trying to determine if it was a deteriorated area. In that process, the city planners did a land use survey in March of this year to assess whether or not there was deteriorating conditions. They would go through and identify deteriorating structures. The stuff that they would look at primarily was related to broken or missing brick, chimney damage, fascia damage, holes in siding, damage or missing shingles, cracked or damaged windows, and things along those lines were the primary factors when determining the status of a structure. Out of the 674 total structures in the area, 151 of those showed signs of deterioration. 84 of them met at least one factor, 50 structures met 2 factors, and 17 structures met 3 factors or more. As you can see on the map, the yellow dots were deteriorating structures. That was the primary purpose of the land use survey. Other things that were indicated was showing a combination of factors such as vacant or underdeveloped land, large lots, oversized blocks, the inadequacy of the street infrastructure, and such as street sidewalks and gutter sidewalks and stormwater infrastructure and things along those lines. So that was the primary purpose of going through that. As noted, the incomplete road network in both the existing mill site of Idaho veneer, if that were to be redeveloped, there would be a number of roads that potentially would be put in there and redeveloped as such, because it's a very large lot as it stands. The mill over here at the Post Falls Landing has remaining infrastructure that needs to be completed as well. Those are the 2 large lots. We're also missing a lot of the ped and bike connections, north and south specifically, as well as some east and west through there. The faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, and accessibility was also highlighted when looking at some of the smaller residential lots, making it a little bit more difficult to develop something that is consistent with the city center master plan and comprehensive plan and adopted zoning code. There is a 10% limitation for the urban renewal districts within the city. The analysis of this 548 acres does indicate that we meet that, that we are within that 10% in terms of value of the taxable value of the structure of the properties within the city. So all the urban renewal districts added together have to be less than 10% for the valuation, which they would be with this included in there. Just a couple of factors to note, questions that came up at the urban renewal agency hearing on this. was the status of the deteriorating status and how that may affect the downtown core, as in will there be any any detriment to the existing properties that are there due to the status creation. But most wanted to answer that is no, there will not be. This is just for the urban renewal district. There's nothing that's put on individual land records or anything along those lines. It just becomes part of the overall district, and it is a way of categorizing and describing an area in terms of being permitted to be part of an urban renewal district. The other question related to individual property taxes and whether or not the effects of improving the street, gutter, sidewalk, and having improvements to area properties would potentially increase the value of properties in that downtown area, thus increasing their taxes. Yes, there's always a possibility that taxes will go up. However, the city only taxes based on the budgetary needs. If we are, seeing that we're going to be getting too many taxes, we don't need that. We don't go for additional revenue. In addition to that, the state does have the circuit breaker program that has helped to alleviate taxes on the more vulnerable populations, low income, elderly, disabled, things along those lines, in case there was an actual issue with increasing tax prices in the downtown. Just as kind of a note, although tonight is primarily focused on determining whether you would agree that it is deteriorating area and want to move forward with creation of a plan, we did want to note that there are a number of potential projects that the city as well as developers may be looking to create in that downtown area. And so we kind of went through just kind of a brief meeting to kind of create a list of items such as the traffic circle or roundabout at Southeast and 4th, a Spokane Street parking lot potentially, acquire railroad property for the potential for a downtown green or parkland or even development. The Southeast Mullen couplet, moving forward with that, implement the city center parking plan, wayfinding, community arts, ped and bike connections, esplanade improvements, working with any developer that may be developing the Idaho veneer site, which will be looking at frontage and infrastructure improvements at the redevelopment of that. Kootenai County Fire Station 1 is currently on a septic system, among others. I just wanted to give you an idea that there is a lot to be done, and we do hope to be able to utilize the Urban Renewal District in order to do some of these projects with them. So the next steps, what we're looking at is that the council would adopt the eligibility report as presented tonight. We would draft a legal description to map the boundaries. We are going to engage the Urban Land Institute of Idaho to present information and case studies on what actions make a downtown district effective. Finish compiling project lists and cost analysis, engage the METS group to draft a feasibility study, and complete the draft of the downtown plan by the end of the year, hopefully.
Any questions, Bob? Steve?
Sure. I know, Bob, at some of the meetings, there was some concerns about the size of the district. But I'm looking at, is this the same size that was proposed, or?
It is.
Okay.
No changes have been made since we started looking at it this spring. There was, we did take some land out of it earlier in the process in January or February when we determined that we were really pushing that 10% max. So we pulled out a couple of things such as Templins and the condos that are down there as well in that area. And we looked at some other sites and thought about pulling them out, but there were certain street improvements or railroad right-of-way that could potentially become a great project if we had them located within the district. So,
Linda.
Bob, if you look on the map and you look at the finger going south there, I believe that is River Run.
So the finger at the very south part of it, is part of the Templins property. That is, we did leave that on there. It is primarily undeveloped at this time, but new owners of Templins Resort are considering the potential for development of that, and we wanted to be able to have it in here just in case that came to fruition and could help with that.
So the northern part of that piece is Templins, but the lower part of that piece is River Run. Is that correct?
I think it's one parcel,
Oh.
but I don't have access
Okay.
to.
Okay, I see.
One parcel.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Okay, yep,
Okay,
thanks.
any other questions?
So how do we get the railroad to cooperate with the Urban Renewal District? Because it's been a problem working with the railroad to clean things up, even to mow the weeds down, and this is right in the center of this proposed Urban Renewal District.
So the railroad, this is just a spur line. They come through there once a week right now to help for deliveries for the Idaho veneer site, as well as for the plumber lumber company down the road. Idaho veneer is looking to close potentially in not too distant future. Plumber may be as well. Thus, the spur line will no longer be needed. So it is our hopes that if it is no longer needed, then the railroad will basically abandon the line and allow us to purchase the property and move forward with it. Yes, there are some areas that are larger swaths of land that probably do look dilapidated and need to be maintained better and stuff along those lines. But it'd be hopes of, as I noted in the projects list, that there was a possibility that maybe we could purchase those properties come the point where the railroad line no longer needs them. And that's part of the process is trying to get to there.
You okay, Lynn?
Yeah, I'm good.
Steve?
Just kind of on Lynn's question, how big is the right-of-way the railroad does have through there?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, and I don't have access to the tool. I would guess it's probably 100 feet, 50 feet.
I would guess it's on that order, and it kind of depends on where it's at, because some of it's platted rights-of-way as well through some of those locations that they're over the top of, so it's kind of hit and miss. I believe it's 100 feet.
That's a big right-of-way through there.
Most typically, they're 100 feet, and I believe that one's about 100 feet for the most of it. The switchyard obviously is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. No more questions. I'd entertain a motion.
I think we have a resolution down.
We have a
Resolution,
there.
Dan? Thank you. It says action item, and I remember you did say there's a resolution. Thanks, Linda. Next item up under unfinished business is item E from the consent calendar of the Master Development Agreement for Coleman Acres. And the reason I asked that this be broken out, several years ago when that property was annexed, there's property to the north being annexed, and staff asked the proponent to try to bring in the remaining island, if you would, between pole line and that particular property. When it came in, one of the property owners made the comment to us that he could not develop that corner lot profitably as single-family residential and asked for an increase in density. I was against it. I didn't get to vote. It was approved. And several months ago, I think it was several months ago, we had a proposal come forward. And as I recall, I don't believe there was anybody on the council that liked what was proposed, and comments were made accordingly. Basically, the decision had already been made with the zoning approval. So the reason I asked to have this come back is because this is a slight increase in the density that was previously proposed, but I believe Councilor Borders made the comment to me, as did staff, that this proposal is significantly improved over what we saw before. And so I just thought information would be helpful.
Absolutely. Happy to show you this. So it went from being called Dobson's Acres, which is the one on the bottom, to Coleman Acres, the one on the top. Now, while this is an increase in overall density for the 3.54 acres on the site, which is the basically the L shape. The corner piece that's actually on that is not part of this redevelopment. So it went from 35 units on 18 lots, which was 7 single families, 8 duplexes, and 3 fourplexes, to 43 mixed product residential styles with 18 single family lots, which is that along the northern side, which abuts the other single family properties. I believe they're single family. They're SC3 zones, so I'm not sure 100% what they are, but these are that one on the north side of the property is all going to be single family. At least that's the current intention for it. But it's 18 single family lots and 10 lots intended to contain no more than a total of 25 multifamily style units, which meets the density minimums of 12 units per acre, and this comes in at 12.15 units per acre for the Coleman acres as it was redeveloped. And it also helped to improve the street lines through there, being able to better connect east to west as well as coming up from pole line. So it basically, as opposed to a standalone multifamily or mixed development, now is able to connect with the neighborhoods and potential future development to the west.
Well, there was concern expressed when we saw it before with the roads, access, I think fire safety, et cetera. And again, I think that the new proposal is a significant improvement over, even though it's slightly higher density, it's much improved over what we saw before.
And I think you'll get a better product from it.
Yeah. So, any other comments on that?
I was wondering why you pulled it out. I was like, it's better.
That's the reason.
Right.
Is because, as you recall, when it came to us before, I don't think there was anybody on the council that was excited about it. And so it's nice to see that the developer on this has brought back a better plan. And it is good to see that a little higher density, but a much better product, so.
Is there going to be a connection of the road to the north, going to the north from that cul-de-sac through?
No, not with this development.
Okay. I just see the dotted lines up there.
Yeah.
Some kind of an easement.
I think it's probably an easement, would be my guess, for sewer.
Okay.
So you need a motion, Mayor?
I would, yeah, please approve.
Move to approve the master development agreement for Coleman Acres subdivision.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. And thanks, council, for indulging me and letting me have that brought forward. Next item on the agenda tonight is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council on a city-related matter that is not on the agenda. Anyone wish to speak, come forward. Seeing none. Next item up is new business, and tonight we have the commitment to acquire the Union Pacific Railroad spur.
So within your, again, Bob Seal, Community Development Director. Within the packet is a sample letter that we have recommended to, would recommend being written and sent to Idaho Transportation Department in relation to the railroad spur that is crossing part of the prairie, bordering between Hutter and all the way to Highway 41 and beyond. ITD, in part of their process of developing Highway 41, has basically been able to nearly come to an agreement with the I think it's Union Pacific Railroad. Sorry, yes, it is. Sorry, UP. Yep. To cut off that spur at 41. It is the city's desire, well, staff's recommendation and hopes to be able to acquire the railroad line in order to hopefully create a future trail to connect to the Prairie Trail that is in existence coming from Coeur d'Alene. As you can see on the map that I've put up, in the lower right-hand corner is the existing trail that is in Coeur d'Alene and comes up to Hutter. from Hutter to Meyer, you see the red line, and that is currently owned by the city of Coeur d'Alene. That is part of the railroad line. And the green line is proposed to be purchased by the Post Falls Highway District due to the intersections surrounding that Prairie and Meyer intersection. And then the yellow is what we are hoping for the city to be able to purchase from UPRR. An appraisal was done, and as indicated in the staff report, it was approximately $365,000 and change would be the potential value of that property as it extends from Highway 41 down to Prairie Avenue. That is what ITD is essentially asking, hoping that the city of Post Falls would purchase through this process in order to buy out, finish buying out the UPRR along that area from our end of things. In your packet, it would relate to parcel, I think it was parcel number 71.
Bob, is if council decides to move forward with this purchase, is the rest of the trail already purchased? I mean, it's, we're going to purchase this and then one of the other entities is not going to, so now we've got a gap?
So Coeur d'Alene already purchased that portion of red. Okay. The Highway District, I believe it was yesterday, sent the same letter that we are asking to send from here, is basically the commitment that we would be looking to acquire the property.
And funding?
Funding, we will have to determine. Funding for the acquisition, there are impact fees within the Parks Department. As for creation and construction of the trail, that will have to be determined in the future, whether it's grants or general funds or impact fees.
Steve?
I know it's not as big a section, but I know Coeur d'Alene was able to fund part of their purchase with utility easements from some of the companies. So would that be a potential when it is extended down?
I don't know if there are any utilities needed to go through there at this time.
Comments? Need a motion on this?
I'd move to approve the commitment to send the letter to acquire the Union Pacific Railroad Spur, number 71.
Motion and second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Borders?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
And tonight, under ordinances and resolutions, we have two resolutions.
Move to approve the resolution fiscal year 2020 fees.
Second.
Motion second. Just further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Motion passes. And the next resolution?
Move to approve the resolution declaring the downtown area to be a deteriorating area.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Anthony?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is the administrative staff reports Highway 41 widening report. Mr. Paulus.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Give me just a second to bring up my PowerPoint presentation. Over the last few years, city staff has been working with the Idaho Transportation Department, reviewing preliminary plans, taking a look at right-of-way availability, and then more recently taking a look at the final plans as they move towards the widening of State Highway 41 from Mullen Avenue up to Buckle Road in Rathdrum. More recently, we've been looking closer at the impacts of the widening on the city infrastructure, the sanitary sewer, and our roadway network. As part of this project, as they move to being ready to go to bidding on this project in the fall of this year, The city will need to enter into a cooperative agreement for construction of the project. This will cover items which the city has either requested ITD to build and that we will need to pay them for, or items which, according to ITD policy, they are requesting for the city to participate in. The city will also need to enter into a memorandum of understanding, which will cover items as far as city and state responsibilities for maintenance of some of the facilities after it is completed. The purpose of the staff report and presentation this evening is to give you an update as to the scope and magnitude of those costs and what some of those improvements are prior to us bringing those agreements to you for consideration. Staff has been working with ITD, and we've gone through about 2 iterations on the initial drafts. This is tonight's opportunity to, again, give you those dollars, show you those improvements, and get some of your feedback on some of the items. Real quickly, State Highway 41 as it exists today, a 2 to 4 lane facility, lacking some safety improvements in the middle. Over the next 2 years, as ITD makes improvements, it's going to look a lot more like this is US 95 as it looks today. There'll be 2 travel lanes in each direction, a 12-foot multi-use path being constructed on the east side of State Highway 41. Accommodations are going to be placed on Highway 41 for a additional multi-use path on the west side, which the city is going to have put in as development occurs on the west side, and there'll be a grass median in the middle. The schedule is for spring 2020 construction and completion in 2022. One of the big things, in addition to putting in lanes, is there's a lot of traffic control, signal work, and intersection control that's being done. The project is going to rebuild the 3 existing traffic signals at Pole Line, Prairie, and Hayden Avenue with State Highway 41. New traffic signals are going to go in at 16th Avenue and Hope Avenue with State Highway 41. This will create an equal spacing of half mile between every intersection from Mullen Avenue up to Hayden. The other intersections that exist in between are at quarter-mile spacings. Those are 12th Avenue, Horsehaven Avenue, Early Dawn, and Killdeer Avenue. Those will be restricted to 3/4 turn movement, meaning that traffic on State Highway 41 will be able to make a left turn onto those side streets, or traffic from Highway 41 will be able to make a right turn onto those side streets. Side street traffic will only be able to make a right turn onto Highway 41. No cross movements at 12th, Horsehaven, Early Dawn, or Killdeer Avenue will be allowed, and no left turns onto Highway 41. The overall estimated cost of this project is $46 million to go all the ways up to Bocal Road in Rathdrum. The improvements in the city of Post Falls area, which is up to Hayden Avenue, is approximately $20 million. This is a fortuitous project in that when we look at our long-range master planning, we anticipate, the image up here is from our transportation master plan, and in our comprehensive plan, it's essentially the same thing, that the area in red is where we anticipate a bulk of our growth occurring over the next 20 years. And Highway 41 runs just about through the middle of that. As that area grows, we've heard at recent public hearings as subdivisions and some annexations have been requested in that area, there are concerns regarding safety on Highway 41. How do people get across it and onto Highway 41 at 16th Avenue? Highway 41 is getting busy. Anecdotally, at least from my perspective, I have seen on a regular basis on Highway 41, both in the morning and in the evening, some of the queuing extending almost a half mile back from traffic signals, not only on the mainline Highway 41, but in a couple of locations on the side streets as well. This is something that is going to serve growth. It's going to serve existing businesses and people who are living in that area. The one thing we don't want to see as this goes in is more collisions. This is an image, it's a little bit hard to see, but it shows Mullen Avenue and State Highway 41, and each little X in there represents a collision over a 5-year period from 2010 to 2015. This shows Pole Line Avenue. The darker purple X's are injury accidents. By providing additional capacity to Highway 41, we should be seeing a reduction in collisions. In particular, with these improvements, we should be seeing a larger reduction in the injury collisions. To get into a little bit more detail as to the improvements that are being done and their costs, 16th Avenue and State Highway 41, we're putting in a new traffic signal, looking at a cost of about $779,000. ITD's policy is generally to take a look at splitting the cost of a new traffic signal on their facilities by the number of lanes of the adjoining jurisdiction against the total number of lanes in that entire intersection. Utilizing that, we come up with about a 43.8% cost to the city, which is about $341,000. Our funding source to meet that would be our transportation impact fees, and that is in our impact fee list for us to take care of already. Pole line and State Highway 41. This is an existing traffic signal. The city staff in negotiations with ITD disagreed with taking their general policy of dividing the number of lanes up proportionately because it was an existing signal. So what we agreed to was taking the number of new traffic lanes that were being created on the city system and dividing that against the total. So here we see a reduction down to about 30.4% city participation, or $242,000 out of that $794,000. Again, our funding source would be impact fees for that. Hope Avenue and State Highway 41. Quite recently, the Tullamore subdivision, and this is halfway between Pole Line and Prairie, the Tullamore subdivision has built the Hope Avenue improvements right up to the Highway 41 right-of-way. And we have worked with that design so that the lanes are lining up with how the signal is going to go in. The cost of this new traffic signal is $779,000. Again, city participation is a little bit less than 50%. Our funding source, we're looking at $116,000 of impact fees, but the city a number of years ago with the Tullamore subdivision had identified their financial contribution of $225,000. Most of that we have already collected, and we would be utilizing that as the match dollars in this area. Prairie Avenue and State Highway 41, another existing traffic signal, and utilizing the calculations, we're looking at 34.3%, or about $272,000 city participation. Again, impact fees. Hayden Avenue and State Highway 41, existing traffic signal. The only difference on this one that gets us down to about a 14% city participation is the city only has control of the west half of that intersection. Impact fees would cover that, and that's at just about $110,000. Another area of city participation and cost, and this is at the request of the city in the project, is for Prairie Avenue between Charleville Road and State Highway 41. Quite recently, the Tullamore 7th subdivision went in, and in that picture down below you can see the barricade. We had them stop their curb and gutter short of where the Highway 41 improvements were going in, so that there would be an easier transition between the Highway 41 improvements and the Prairie improvements in this area. There's also a small gap in there of missing improvements that were not part of the Tullamore subdivision. We had the developer contribute $30,235, which is what their estimated cost was of the improvements that they held back on. And then the missing gap of improvements would be city participation of $44,765, and that would be from impact fees as part of the Prairie and Highway 41 intersection improvements. The Union Pacific Railroad main line. This is a little bit outside of our current city boundary. The main line crosses halfway between Hayden Avenue and Meyer Road. City staff was working with the Idaho Transportation Department a number of months ago, and our Highway 41 corridor master plan, which was entered into by the state, Kootenai County, the Highway District, City of Rathdrum, City of Post Falls, and the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, identifies a multi-use path to go along both sides of State Highway 41. ITD was proposing only having a multi-use path on one side of the bridge being constructed at that location. In some initial discussions, ITD thought that they could put a undercrossing of that bridge on the north side of the rail. One of the difficulties, and conflicts that the city staff had with that was that would require, in order for a person to get from the north side of the tracks to the south side of the tracks on the west side of Highway 41, a person would essentially have to go 2 miles out of their way to make that loop. So we asked, and ITD took a look and said, well, we can modify that bridge structure and we can widen and put an additional 12-foot multi-use path on the west side of that bridge. They came back at that time and then also said that they would be looking for participation from the city at 50% of the cost of widening that bridge and the engineering costs of that widening. That was about the time when we were looking and saying, well, we're not sure in that area between Hayden and Wyoming, where's the city boundary going to be versus Rathdrum city boundary. And so right now it is in the agreement, draft agreement, as well as Rathdrum's draft agreement, that the 50% share of the local jurisdiction be split half between Rathdrum, half between the city of Post Falls. This is an area where we do really want to get your input and thoughts on, because it is a half mile north of our current city boundary, as to whether or not you want to participate in it. The estimated city share of $170,576. We do not have a firm funding source, and we would be requesting, if we did participate, that that would be from general funds.
Okay.
Real quick, you said north of our city boundary, area
Yes.
city impact, or city boundary?
It's in the shared tier area.
Okay.
Thoughts?
What's your recommendation?
My recommendation is, taking a look at this, there's a potential this could become the city of Rathdrum. Depending upon what policymakers decide, it could also be the city of Post Falls someday. But taking a step back from my position and looking at the larger regional benefit of having a trail along both sides of Highway 41, a bridge has a life expectancy well over 50 years. And to not put a facility on both sides of the bridge long-term could hamper multimodal transportation in this area. I think we would be better off to have that on there than not have it. And it would be nice if the jurisdictions worked together to share the costs in putting this together, regardless of whose exact city boundary it may end up in.
I think it has an effect, it will have an effect on the citizens of both cities.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of heartburn about it at all. I was just curious, you've obviously spent a lot more time looking at this than we have. So.
Steve?
Yeah, Rob, I've assumed you've talked to staff from Rathdrum about the splitting of the cost.
We have not been in direct contact with the staff from Rathdrum on this. I do know that the Idaho Transportation Department was meeting with the city of Rathdrum today and discussing in greater detail this item, along with the other items that they have on the memorandum of understanding that they have. Basically, they're in the same position we're at right now. So we need to do a little bit more follow-up with them on that issue.
I think it's like the purchasing of the rail spur that's a bit out of city limits now too. It would be a huge lost opportunity if, in this case, if it doesn't get built with the extra pedestrian access, or in the case of the trail, if other development comes in there and you just lose the opportunity. So.
Okay. Staying on the railroad theme, Union Pacific Railroad spur at State Highway 41 and grade separation. You just heard about the Feely spur, and we're moving forward on that letter of commitment to purchase the right-of-way from the Highway 41 crossing over to Meyer. The regional plan indicates a crossing at this location. ITD has said that they do not have the funds to provide an undercrossing at this location right now. It does long-term have a benefit to the area. The cost of this is fairly great, $1.5 million, in order to put an undercrossing in at this time. Again, we do not have a funding source for those type of improvements at this time. There are a number of different potentials out there, but there's no commitment, and without a committed funding source, ITD would not install an undercrossing at this location at this time. Would like your input on that.
How much more would it cost roughly to install one later?
How much more?
I know we don't have a crystal ball on inflation and construction costs and everything else, but
Yeah.
is there anything in the actual design of it that makes it more efficient to do it now as opposed to punching one through later?
The biggest item is that makes it easier now is that you have the heavy equipment out there on site, so your mobilization cost goes down quite a bit. There would need to be a significant amount of cut as part of that $1.5 million. That would have to happen in the future as well as today if it was built. You're adding, if it has to be built tomorrow, well, sometime in the future when it's needed more, you'd be looking at more of the cost of additional road, because you'd be closing down 2 lanes of traffic at a time and doing rerouting. So you'd have your traffic control costs and also the cost of tearing out and rebuilding sections of State Highway 41. Are we looking at a doubling of cost? I rather doubt that, but you could see a 20 to 30% increase in cost, and that's my professional judgment on that.
Okay, so the trail is only it's gonna stop at 41, correct?
The long-range plan shows the trail continuing beyond Highway 41 up to the Union Pacific main line, which is about 3/4 of a mile further to the northwest. From that point, we don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to do, other than if you get to that point 3/4 of a mile down the road, you would then have to either take a right and head back to the northeast to get back to Highway 41, or you would have to head to the southeast, which will slowly get you back to our land acquisition or land app sites, Greens Ferry Road, Hayden Avenue.
Where are the nearest, once the 41 improvements are approved, assuming this tunnel does not exist, where are the nearest pedestrian crossings?
The nearest pedestrian crossing would be at Prairie Avenue, slightly less than a half-mile to the south, and following the half-mile spacing that we talked about earlier with the new signals, right at the base of where you see the Idaho 41 emblem, that's the half-mile mark, so there is the potential of a traffic signal going in at that point sometime in the future. So then you're looking at about 700 feet from a surface crossing location. Surface crossing locations work for pedestrians. They can make it a little bit problematic for how you program traffic signals and get heavy rates of traffic through. And it can also create a safety issue. But you also take a look and say, how many crossings of pedestrians do you have in this entire corridor? This would be the only one east-west that gives you a separated crossing, and then you'd have the one north-south about a mile to the north.
So Rob, if there wasn't a tunnel, there will be a bike trail on the east side that goes to Rafterum. So once you hit that, you could stay on the bike trail and go to Rafterum or come back down.
That is correct.
Falls. So you'd have to ride down and hit the light down there at probably Prairie and then go
yes.
across. Okay.
Any comments or thoughts?
Any particular direction that you would like to see on this?
Rob, it looks like there
state
are
pay for it.
grants available, and I'm not really following why you have urban renewal funding up there.
This was something that was identified as a potential urban renewal project.
Oh.
It was one that, based upon my understanding, that there are other improvements that have a higher priority within the urban renewal district with the tech park, and so that this was in there, but it's not right now something that they are committed to participating in.
Price tag scares me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with the grant?
So you would be committing to this without knowing whether or not you actually received the grants.
Grants,
So that's
yeah.
one of the things with the grants. There are some grants that we could pursue, but we would not know whether or not you had received them at the time you're committing with ITD.
I'm not comfortable with committing $1.5 million at this point.
No.
Okay. Well, you did ask the question, and this is something that can be built in the future as well. I have talked with ITD about that, and every so often ITD does go out and resurface their roadways, and so sometime in the future, if the stars align and we see a need, we could coordinate with that. It's a matter of time and finding money and resources to do that. So I thank you for your input on that. Utility. The City of Post Falls is requesting that ITD provide a 36-inch casing to have a 12-inch force main underneath the road at 12th Avenue. This is part of the Northeast Quadrant study so that we can get sewage from our expanded 12th Avenue lift station to the treatment plant someday. That has an estimated cost of $60,000, and the Urban Renewal Agency is committed to funding that. It's a matter of timing and convenience to have ITD build that instead of making it one of our projects, since ITD will already be tearing the roadway apart, and they can schedule that better. Also, this is not going to be part of the agreements, but we do have going on in the area the construction of a 21-inch sewer main from 12th Avenue up to Horsehaven. That's a $1.2 million project, and that has urban renewal funding on it. That's an important project in that we are waiting for ITD to complete their right-of-way acquisitions so we can get started with that project, put in that sewer so that we are out of the way and they can widen the highway. There's a number of miscellaneous sewer adjustments that are part of the project. The city, as sewer has been extended along Highway 41, has had those sewer extensions put in city right-of-way, and as a cost of mitigating that sewer being there, ITD is responsible for making extensions from our sewer main out to the new rights-of-way line and making sure that any services that are out there are also extended out and are away from the highway construction itself. Some other things that occur on the project, we have requested future irrigation service sleeves. What that is for the center grass median. We're having them put conduits out there, so in the event that someday we want to landscape that and beautify those areas, we could get irrigation systems out there. Additionally, with each property out there, we are putting an irrigation sleeve underneath the trail so that as those properties develop and they start to change from a dry land grass type view of Highway 41 to a more manicured grass look, that they can get that irrigation out there. That has a cost to the project of about $7,875, and we're proposing that that would come out of general funding since that's not impact fee related. Other costs which go above and beyond the normal just getting it built, and these are types of costs that go on anytime we have a subdivision come into the city of Post Falls, or if a commercial development comes in and they add to the city infrastructure, we have ongoing operation and maintenance costs. And we've tried to quantify that a little bit for you so you have a better understanding and an appreciation of what these type of projects, any project does to the city budget. First, we mentioned there's a bike path going along the east side. On an annual basis for just what's going in on this project, we're estimating about $5,100 per year. That's taking the $25,500 per year cost, or excuse me, the $25,500 once every 5-year cost of chip sealing and preserving the trail and splitting it out. And then on an annual basis, we'd be looking at about $3,000 a year for our staff and equipment to go out there, blow leaves off the trail, clear snow, and other just general maintenance items. For the side roads and streets, we got our surface preservation. We tend to go out and chip seal roads about once every 7 years. For the amount of new pavement that we are putting in, we are looking at about a $10,862 annual cost. We would actually incur that about once every 7 years at that $76,000. Roadway markings, to remark all the improvements that ITD is putting in on the city streets. That's about $10,500 per year for us to restripe that. And then you have street sweeping. We tend to try to get each of those intersections 7 times per year, and that would cost about $21,000. Snow plowing, that's a little bit of a variable. It's weather dependent, and also currently right now all those side streets are plowed by the Post Falls Highway District as part of a memorandum of understanding that we have with them. So it was a little bit more difficult to quantify that cost. Electricity, traffic signals, ITD anticipates that the city of Post Falls will be paying the electrical operating costs of all the traffic signals on Highway 41. That is not something that is really new, in that the city of Post Falls is already paying by memorandum of understanding the electrical costs at Mullen, Pole Line, and Prairie Avenue. So we will be adding 3 new traffic signals at about $120 per month to operate those signals. Also, when you look at operation and maintenance, when it comes to clearing the snow from the trail, that's something that we are currently doing on the existing trail from Southeast Way up to Mullen Avenue, and we do in other locations around town as well, such as by the Beck Road interchange. So, just summarizing it, we had about $1.82 million in estimated city share towards construction. Out of that, $1.2 million would be from the transportation impact fees. Those are dollars that we already have available and are collecting funds towards. Out of the general fund, we would be looking at $382,875. $375,000 of that was for the Union Pacific Railroad main line, and then you have $7,875 for irrigation sleeves. There was the $60,000 of urban renewal participation in the utilities, and then we have about $256,000 of developer contribution. And then above and beyond, the estimated about $58,000 a year of operation and maintenance costs to the city. So the State Highway 41 widening project provides a great opportunity to accommodate current traffic and future growth in the area. Proposed improvements, when they are done, are going to add and provide a safer, more efficient transportation network, not only for our residents, but for our commercial and industrial areas. It serves us locally, it also serves the region. When we look at what's being requested of about $1.8 million out of a $40 million project, and that it will improve regional mobility from now up until 2040 and possibly beyond, this looks like a good investment for the city of Post Falls. And when this project is done in 2022, we are anticipating that ITD will be following up with tearing out the Highway 41 I-90 interchange and spending about another $40 million to make those further improvements to our community. I stand for any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Linda?
I would just like to thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. It certainly was an eye-opener for me, and I'm sure it was an eye-opener for the public as well, to see that, yes, we have a lot of growth, but that growth is helping to pay for itself too along Highway 41. And I mean, I know we're all worried about traffic, so thank you very much for that, Rob. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah, I had something too along that same lines. I didn't do the math quickly, but I think that those stoplights that you referenced, Pole Line, 16th Hope Avenue, Prairie, Hayden, about in excess of $3 million for those impact fees, which are paid due to development, and additional developer contributions. None of that's coming out of our general fund. And I know that a lot of times, people talk about growth paying for itself, and, the traffic and the growth on Highway 41. Well, that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples of traffic signals that are being paid for by the growth, by the developers, and impact fees. So, thank you.
Rob, I want to thank you too. Good presentation, and I need to change my fodder, so to speak, because when I go out and speak to groups, I tell them, ask them if they know what streetlights cost, and I was always using about 400,000. I'm only off by about, I'm going to guess 44%, somewhere in there.
So for a traffic signal that's built on a city roadway, you are looking at about $500,000 in cost. There's a few other things that are going in on these traffic signals that make them a little bit more expensive. Just a couple things which I really like about the fact of the traffic signals that are going in on this project is, one, we are making sure that they have Opticom detection on it, which allows emergency services to move through those signals more quickly. And then we're also making sure that the traffic signals, you've seen it at Spokane Street and 4th, and our newer traffic signals, the street name signs are going to be the internally illuminated ones. And we did make a request for them to include the city logo on the city streets and the Highway 41 logo on the Highway 41 signs. So it should add nicely to our community.
Thanks again, Rob. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment on the amount of time that engineering has spent with ITD on this project. I think when we all think of a state project, we believe that the bulk of the work is on the state. And when I first heard the numbers that came forward, and Rob and Bill had brought those forward, I think Bob hadn't even started yet. It was well over $3 million that they were requesting for the city to participate in this project. And you can see that's been reduced down by about half, and that's through negotiations with the city and with the state. But Bill and Rob and various other staff have been meeting on and off with the state for a couple of years on this. It's been a significant time with our staff helping the state to develop this out. So while it's a state project, we've definitely tried to make it something that we can be proud of that represents our citizens here in Post Falls.
Thank you. Mayor comments, two things. First, to everyone involved with Post Falls Days and the parade, thank you. Big success. I had to follow Councilor Malloy, though, to get over to the starting point, and he was driving not like he was in a police car, just saying. But I think Joe made the comment, he says he's never seen so many people congregate in that one area like that. So, again, very well coordinated, Dave, to your folks. I've heard nothing but good things about the festival. So thanks, that is good for the city of Post Falls. We appreciate your efforts. Chief, great article in the paper on School Resource Officer Putnam. I guess nothing surprises me. That's just kind of commonplace, but that doesn't mean it's not a huge acknowledgement and accomplishment on his part. And I love it when our police department, our whole city gets that kind of positive public publicity. So thank you, and please pass my thanks on to School Resource Officer Putnam. Mayor comments. Council comments. Helps me.
No, it's just the Post Falls Parade. I was amazed about the amount of kids. I think I've never seen so many kids at a parade in my life. They're just
They know we can throw candy in this town.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you a little story. The guy I worked with was standing next to a little boy, and he had 2 bags of candy, and people kept throwing. He said, "Mom, I'm tired. I don't want any more." So you don't hear that too often.
We do not need an executive session tonight?
We do not.
The next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.